If I'm a big fan of an artist and I want to relive this night on my headphones, I think giving them the opportunity to do that is important. I mean, it all comes down to building your audience, right? I think finding efficient ways to reach people. Back then, yeah, you standing in Times Square selling your mixtape,
Yeah.
In a crowded place, so you're gonna hopefully make one-on-one connections. Being fresh with the ideas, it was like, that's really cool. I wish we thought of that.
Yeah.
Like versus the generic cookie cutter standard, way to interact on a TikTok or social.
Yeah.
Like, I like to execute a vision, right? And I felt proud that vision was executed, and to see that he thought so as well. Like, that's why we do it. Like, for every 3 bad ideas, you got a couple of really great ones. So.
Welcome to the Sound Centric Podcast. I am your host, Adam Dash, and today we are joined by a legendary man in the music industry. He is the CEO of Big.Ass.Kids, an incredible company in New York that is providing resources for rising artists, events for music industry professionals, doing their own marketing. He used to be the head of booking at SOBs, one of the most famous venues where J. Cole, Kendrick, Drake, Kanye, every person on your Mount Rushmore has performed there at some point. Manager for Charles Hamilton.
Yeah.
Coming up, the beginning of his career in the blog era,
Yeah.
one of the blog era goats
Yeah.
of that time. Leroy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a little while, so pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You came into music at like a perfect time, the blog era.
The best time.
Did you know during that time, like how, because the internet was really booming at that point, were you able to recognize like, oh, I'm in the middle of something like magic happening?
Yeah, I sensed the shift in how music was being shared, and this was even before streaming. This was before Spotify, and, this was still, people still had to go buy CDs and whatnot. But, there were certain sites that were introducing music to different communities and audiences, and, editorials start to take place from a digital standpoint. And Tastemakers, I think, kind of was birthed from that time frame. So really starting to see people who are fans of music create lanes for themselves to introduce other artists from, coast to coast and different countries and whatnot. So it made the job easier to introduce music that you wouldn't otherwise have discovered, if it wasn't for the internet. So yeah, it was definitely a really cool moment.
I feel like we see artists a lot nowadays complain about having to market online. And there we go. Do you think like the Grateful Dead would have been on TikTok posting their music?
Hell no.
And on the other hand, I'm not sure if modern artists necessarily want to be selling CDs out of the trunk of the car, which might have been, or standing at the mall, like the other side of the option of before streaming. Having been like coming into the music industry at a time where it was kind of going from that old passing out CDs, which Cole's bringing back for the album, but now it being like the content creation side, like how do you guide artists around that?
I mean, it all comes down to building your audience, right? I think finding efficient ways to reach people. Back then, yeah, you standing in Times Square selling your mixtape, in a crowded place, so you're gonna hopefully make one-on-one connections. But I think now with the digital landscape, you're able to reach more people faster.
Yeah.
So, you're fighting for attention. Everyone's trying to get everyone's attention. So being clever and being creative to find ways to connect with people that otherwise wouldn't find you. Mm-hmm. So it's important. It's important to learn how to do that in your own way. That doesn't necessarily mean every artist needs to come up with a dance on TikTok. I think you just have to present your art. There's a new layer of presenting your art in a way where people will embrace it and become fans of it.
Are there any artists you've seen recently that have had cool campaigns or things that you thought were, outside of the box? I know like Lexa Gates, if you're familiar with her, did a cool like visual in-person thing. I'm seeing Marlon Craft tonight for his album release party, but he did a like a jazz club residency in New York.
Yeah.
Where instead of doing like a tour, we've seen it's kind of a new thing, like Harry Styles is coming to MSG and just doing a residency. But are there any like cool things that you've seen from some rising artists?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the kings, Tizo. Tizo is always coming up with an interesting way to connect.
The Post-it note thing for the album rollout that he had.
The Post-it note, but even the creative around the visual, like the post-it notes were really cool. You know, he recently did something where it was like a Zoom, you know, where he invited a bunch of fans onto the Zoom. I don't know if that was a video or if that was an actual campaign to introduce, you know, riding around in Ubers playing, you know, people music. Like, it's just, again, being fresh with the ideas. It was like, that's really cool. I wish we thought of that, you know, like versus the generic cookie cutter standard, you know, way to interact on a TikTok or social. Like, finding ways that stand out. Tyler, the creator, is another really exciting one.
Amazing at it,
you know, from an aesthetic or, you know, character, world building element of it all. I'm big on world building. So, you know, seeing the execution of the idea, but the execution behind it is what excites me. So, you know, Tizo is the one that kind of stands out for me.
I like when an artist merges like their interest outside of music, or it could be within music with the marketing. So Tyler, from his marketing, you can tell like he loves film. Like that's always been his thing, where he's like done the comedy show growing like in the beginning of the blog era, or Action Bronson like merging food with it, or like Logic or Super Duper Kyle like love video games. Like that became part of like their connection with fans. So I like when artists are able to like, you can tell what they're into.
Yeah, have fun with it, right? Yeah. I think people, you know, artists kind of have this stigmatism of like being active on socials is, you know, like a chore, right? Like you're not enjoying doing it. You feel like it's a checklist, like, oh, I gotta do this on socials. But if you look at it from like, well, how do I present my art in a way where it's fun, right? Where it's true to kind of what I want to do, and build this take this opportunity to build a little mini world around your presentation, and it connects. I think, you know, if you don't look at it that way, then it could feel like, oh, I gotta post X times a day, or it should be, you know, find a way to make it exciting and interesting, you know?
Like challenge yourself and like kind of get change of mindset.
Yeah, have fun with it. It's supposed to be fun. Like you're making your art. You're supposed to enjoy, you know.
And the stuff that does well usually is creative stuff where you get that feeling of, why didn't I think of that first?
Yeah.
So instead of like riding waves of doing it after the person did it first, like find your version of that.
Yeah. Look, you shouldn't force it either. Like, you know, let it come to you. Like if you don't have that idea ready to go, you shouldn't prevent yourself from putting music out. I'm not saying like you need to have one ready to go along with the music, but use it as an opportunity to be creative and finding unique ways to present the music in a way where it's memorable, right? You know, and it usually has a good result, even if it's not a big budget kind of thing. I've seen just really cool ideas from people's bedroom, right? That just connect, you know. So it's not about spending a lot of money. It's about just really being thoughtful in the presentation.
Even with Doechii and Anxiety, I think a part of the cool thing with that was that you saw, with all the industry plan comments, like 4+ years ago, her being on YouTube in her bedroom making that song.
I mean, that's a whole nother thing about the industry plant comment. Like, you know, like, you know, I have my own opinion about that, but Doechii's been around working hard for years, you know, and when you're talented and you find the right team, that's what your team's supposed to do. They're supposed to create opportunities for you. They're supposed to use their resources to get you in front of people. So I don't know why industry plant became this bad thing. You know, if you work hard to get to a point where you caught the attention of a strong team, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to put you somewhere where you're more visible and building bigger audiences. So,
for sure, I'm curious if you have a hot take on this concept. That I'm not sure even who started it, the whole cleansing of the Instagram feed when a new album comes out. Because I thought a cool thing about Doechii is that we still have access to these videos of her coming up, where you are able to see that. For certain artists, they might clear the YouTube for the new album. Do you have any take on that, of liking it or not liking it?
I don't have an opinion on if it's good or bad. I think what it does is it's a signal for the most part. Like, oh, something's coming. Like, this is like a sign of like new music, or the artist could just be fucking with someone. Like, you know, make them think that new music's coming out just to create some excitement. Like, I feel like Frank Ocean would do something like that, where it's like, is he dropping new music now? He cleared his Instagram, and it's like, you know, the joke's on you. But I think it's, again, I think there should be some level of intention, even if the intention is to be unintentional, if that makes any sense. It's like, you know, I don't see an issue with having different tactics on how you want to engage with your audience. Yeah.
And you were saying this before, that you were happy we were doing this in person.
Yeah.
That like that in-person contact with fans and people is just so much better and more important for building a fan base. And I mean, a lot of artists are in their bedroom or kind of are afraid of taking that next step of like doing in-person activation type things, because we've seen artists who their first time ever performing is out on the festival stage, and where people criticize their music, their performing ability, and it's like they didn't start the SOBs, they didn't have the time to kind of work their way up.
Yeah.
How are you managing that now with artists?
In terms of kind of like just the phases of.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be prepared, right? I think it happens. One example was when I was at SOBs. I remember when House of Balloons just came out, and everyone was trying to not just book the weekend, but they're trying to find who the contact was.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's trying to reach out to this producer or this publicist or this that had a relationship, and it was one of those moments where, he very rarely did shows, and you would see like these grainy footage of like showcases and little performances that he did. But then he went from that to dropping House of Balloons, where he could have easily sold out, 1,000 cap rooms. Yeah. And he kind of skipped that stage of like just doing a ton of shows, building, getting his chops up. And I think, it forced him to work on his craft, to then present the music live in a way that you're like, oh shit, this project was dope. The live show is also dope. So, the artist needs to know when they'll know when they're ready to hop on the stage.
Yeah.
But it's all about preparation, man. And sometimes you have the luxury of working your way up. Sometimes you drop a record that just connects so far that you have to now figure it out. There's always no rush either. You don't have to hit the stage tomorrow because you have a big record.
Yeah.
It just now gives you the opportunity to think about, how do I want to present this on a live stage? Do I want to take vocal lessons? Do I want to get a stage coach? Do I want to get in shape and run around a little bit? Like, figure out now what your performance is going to be. And it's a good problem to have. Like, if you're now in that position, it means something's working well. So
yeah, a rapper who I love, Chris Patrick. I saw a video of him doing jump roping while trying to rap his songs in preparation for the touring. And like, it was cool seeing that behind the scenes, because I can imagine, especially rappers, breath control. It's just insane.
Yeah, breath control is insane, but it's also like the nerves of performing in front of people. Like you combine that, you kind of like do the jump roping thing to kind of like accelerate,
heart rate.
Yeah. So when you're on stage, it feels a bit easier. But yeah, it's being on, like, I've never performed, but like I would imagine it's like a workout. Like you have to be in shape to, especially if you're on the road every single night, you have to be in shape to do it.
My senior prom was at the Fillmore in Philly, and I got to perform on stage, and I did one song, and I'm like, holy, even doing like karaoke, I'm singing Slide by Frank Ocean. I'm like, how does he do this? It's just tiring.
Yeah, I could imagine, man. It couldn't be me, but yeah.
Do you have any top shows at SOBs that come to mind when you look back?
Number one show, I'd say the number one show had to have been when DMX came back out. I mean, DMX wasn't doing shows for a while, and shout out to Bazaar Royale who had a great relationship with X, and me being from Yonkers, I grew up listening to X, so it was an opportunity to like, we get to bring him back to New York and to do a big show, and we didn't know if it was real or not because it wasn't through like a CAA or William Morris. It was like an independent booking agent who said they represented X, and we weren't really quite sure if it was legit or not. Paid a big sum of money to get him there, and didn't show up for sound check. We're like, fuck, is he actually gonna show up? And 30 minutes before doors, still no word, and then he shows up, with his entourage, like 10 minutes before doors open, and he did like a 2-hour set, did every big record he had, let it all out on the stage, and it was just like, packed room. Swiss Beats was there. Like, it was just one of those things where it was definitely, you can tell it was a special moment in hip hop that night.
I'm not sure if this is sacrilegious or good. I actually listened from front to back for the first time, Hell is Hot, this week. the first album, right?
Yeah.
First time front to back to listening to it. Something gave me the urge. I don't know what I was bumping, but I'm like, I don't think I've ever like bumped this DMX fully. And
It's classic.
I understand now.
Yeah, no, good, because that's one of those records that like they're defining. You know,
Yeah.
like he was a unique artist when he came out, and especially like out of Yonkers and like New York City, like he came on a scene. He just came on a scene and just became a superstar. Like
Yeah, because I knew there was the back-to-back #1 albums.
yeah,
Like the same.
he went platinum twice in a year.
Crazy.
You know,
Because my favorite part about hip hop sometimes is like I'm listening to the first time, and I hear something that J. Cole interpolated on his new album, like the "How's it going down?" is on to the gun, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't like J. Cole just doing that. Like he was sampling or interpolating.
Oh yeah, he took that. Yeah. That's X. That's X.
But like I didn't even realize that. So I think that's the cool part of hip hop that it
Yeah.
makes you like go back and study it and be like, oh.
There's a lot of
Where did that
moments
come
like
from?
that. There's a lot of moments where you think that's like the original, and like, you know, there are little tidbits that come from, you know, 80s records and 90s records that
Yeah.
are like, even if it's a line or something or just a specific flow or cadence, like, oh, that's from.
Yeah.
So like, there's always these Easter eggs in
Like
hip-hop.
Cole said, ugh, nice watch, and I'm listening to a Jay album, and I'm like, oh, it was a Jay-Z line. He wasn't just like saying that for chorus purposes.
Yeah.
But that shit always gets me very excited.
Yeah.
Any other shows that come to mind for SOBs?
Man, there's so many. There was so many. You know, there's one that wasn't a hip hop show that really stood out to me. This this kid, this artist Alan Stone out of Seattle, soul singer. You know, it was one of those artists where it was just strictly booked. We booked it straight off talent alone.
Yeah.
We didn't care. We didn't care if it had a following. We didn't care if he's played New York before. We're like, he's gonna become a big artist no matter what.
Yeah.
And we want to introduce him to New York at SOBs. We'll work this show like we're on his team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll bring him to Rolling Stone. We'll do a press run with him because people need to hear this.
Yeah.
And he did not disappoint. He has we watched a video. It was called like Live from His Mother's Living Room, and that did it. Like my Koza, who was the head of PR at SOBs, we watched that video. We're like, we need to get him here, and it was a sold out show, and it was one of the favorite bookings we had because it was about the love of the music and introducing great music to New York, and it wasn't about like just like it could have been 50 people in that room with the same quality show. We would have been like, this was a great booking. So shout out to Alan Stone, man. He's gone off to do amazing things. He's toured the world. An amazing talent. And that was definitely one of those.
Well, that makes me think, 'cause I think most people don't understand how booking actually works, and that you do have to consider, can this person bring a fan base to New York City? Do they actually have one there, or doing it for the love of the game? What were I assume you also probably didn't know that until you started working in the job. What were some of those like behind the scenes things that you learned?
I mean, I learned a lot. I learned because before SOBs, I was a manager. Like I was, I came in the industry as a manager, and I would get offers for my artists for shows, and a lot of times I would accept, or I would turn it down, but I would turn it down because I felt like the money wasn't right, but it was because I had a number in my mind. I didn't know like capacity, ticket price, are there sponsors involved? So once I got to SOBs, Larry, who I consider a mentor of mine, he taught me like, this is how you craft an offer, right? And it allowed me to, book artists at deals that made sense for the room, but also made sense for the artist, and like back end deals where if you sell out, there's bonuses and all these kinds of things where I didn't realize existed. I thought it was just like, well, what are you going to pay me to do the show? Without knowing how many people the venue held, right? So it's like understanding the dynamics between capacity, ticket price, if there's sponsors involved, what brings a deal, to the table. So I think that was one of the things. And sometimes it's what I learned is you can find an artist that 100% deserves to be playing SOBs, but it's also a timing thing, right? Sometimes it might be a little too early, and you don't sell as much because maybe the music's good, or maybe people don't know the artist, but they might know the song.
Yeah.
Right. They're fans of the song, but they don't really know who the artist is.
Yeah.
And unless you're getting radio promo for the show, you're not really going to sell tickets because people aren't connecting the dots between who's performing in the songs that they're actually listening to.
Yeah.
So timing was important for us to know when to reach out to an artist, to maximize on like the perfect storm of them connecting with an audience, them being routed through New York versus it being a one-off.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that because being in New York City, this is like the biggest city or one of them in the world.
Yeah.
So one-offs do happen. Like coming from
Yeah.
Philly, like it's more rare that a person just randomly does a one-show
Yeah.
in Philly.
Yeah.
So is that something like, was SOBs reaching out to artists to do one-shows, or would they be reaching out to SOBs when they felt that they wanted to do a show?
A little bit of both. Like we would reach out. By that point we're talking to the Cara Lewis, the Peter Schwartz, who do you have? What tours are you putting together, right? And if it's an artist that should be playing the room, we would want to be the New York stop on that run.
Yeah.
So it's being routed versus, doing one show and then we're like the anchor, right? But it's all case by case. Like we prefer to do it when there's a run, but if it's like we got to do this one off just because it's the right thing to do, well, we can, as long as the business is right, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And I feel like there's like the belief, maybe it's an outdated belief, that like touring is where the artist makes their money, whether it's off merch or like doing the shows. But now that's not so much the case. Where do you see artists that are rising, like making the money to like make this a career for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think, all the factors of the business, obviously we all know about streaming, and streaming doesn't really generate enough to sustain. It doesn't, and there are platforms like Even that allow artists to monetize their music before it hits the DSPs, direct to fan, and set the price, and you're actually generating you can generate significant amount of money before it's even available on the DSPs. It can even help you create momentum going into the release. So there's a lot of pros in doing direct to fan. We're recently launching a new product called Monetize that allows artists to monetize their show, as a piece of digital merch, so fans can take that show home with them if they like.
Oh, and listen to it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've always wished artists did that. So
I mean, especially coming from SOBs, I've seen plenty of shows where I'm like, oh, that needs to live somewhere. Like, how do I revisit? Whether I was here or if I wasn't, if I was here, how do I go back and revisit it? If I wasn't here, how do I experience it?
Yeah.
Right. So
sometimes it's better. Like sometimes the live version is even better than your favorite studio version of the song. Yeah,
there's different emotions in the delivery of the music, and you just never know. Sometimes there's special guests, or maybe there's some crowd interaction that just became memorable.
Yeah.
That you want to preserve that, right? So there's a lot of things you want to do. You want to be able to preserve that in a way where it can become an additional asset for the artist to generate more revenue.
Yeah.
It can be another way for fans to interact with the music and live with it, right? And it's just just a great way for artists to add another layer of revenue while they're on the road.
It honestly feels like a no-brainer type of idea. Because, I mean, even Anderson .Paak's Tiny Desk, I'm like, why can't that be on streaming? That is him doing Hard Don't Stand a Chance. I need that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's obstacles. There's obviously you can't ignore the rights clearance part of it all, and which you need to do regardless. But not every song from the performance needs to live on a DSP. Yeah. So you can be selective. And there are fans, this is the era of the super fan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And there are fans that are willing to support a bit more than some casual fans. And I think, providing them access to the things that they want. If I'm a big fan of an artist and, I want to relive this night on my headphones, I think giving them the opportunity to do that is important. Because that show only happens once. Every show is unique. Yeah. That show is not going to happen again tomorrow, even if it's the same set, same venue. That show that night is only happening one time.
Yeah.
So it just gives a unique tool for artists to connect with their fans, you know? So we're rolling that out.
I love that. Well, I want to talk about like Big.Ass.Kids.
Yeah.
CEO over here, Mr. CEO. How did you get into that role of that creation of the concept from SOBs and leaving there?
So after SOBs, I went back into management. I worked with several artists, you know, all of which were emerging. You know, Lion Babe was an artist that I worked with a very long time, 10 plus years. You know, Bishop Nehru, Kwame Live, worked with MF Doom with
That's
Bishop,
crazy.
which was an insane story.
Rest in peace, the GOAT.
Yeah, that was just a special moment to be able to kind of see, you know, how he worked and, you know, whatnot.
He's like a mythical figure.
Yeah.
Is it like weird seeing him in person? It's like, oh, you're actually a human.
Like you only like he feels like a comic book character, right?
Yeah.
So it's like to see him in person was really cool. But, you know, spending some time on the management front, like I always had ideas. Like there were ideas that I wanted to bring to life.
Yeah.
So Big.Ass.Kids became my outlet for ideas that I wanted to conceptualize and bring to life, you know. And the name itself kind of came from a conversation with an old colleague of mine, Ashley, who I used to work with at SOB. We were just having a conversation. We were like, man, we used to run around this place like some big-ass kids.
Yeah.
Right? And then that phrase really stuck with me because, you know, being a big-ass kid, like having an imagination, having these ideas that you want to, you know, taking risks, taking chances on ideas, and the joy of seeing them come to life.
Yeah.
Right? So BAK was that for me, right? So, you know, the first thing we did was work on a project called See You Next Year with Pigeons and Planes.
Yeah.
Right? And that was basically a collaboration with them to bring emerging artists together and creating a unique experience that came with an album.
Yeah.
Right?
I know Mike Dean was on there. Red Veil, I'm a huge fan of, was on there.
Yeah, I mean, the Mike Dean thing, it wasn't necessarily planned out the gate. It was one of those things where I was talking to Jacob for a while about the idea, and you know, it took a while to kind of figure out the pieces to make it happen. And you know, P&P is a brand that I've respected since I got in the industry.
Yeah.
You know, their first ever post was Charles.
Really?
Yeah, so it was like a very kind of full circle moment to like, you know, collaborate with them on his project. So we were like, all right, let's just announce that we're making a project together.
Yeah.
You know, and then Mike Dean chimed in and was like, you know, executive producer with a question mark. I'm like, oh shit, you know, Mike, you know, he caught wind of this, like, you know, and I had connected with Mike years before, so I messaged him like, hey Mike, this is something that we're working on. Like I saw that you commented, like, what are you thinking? What do you have in mind? And he was working on a project as well. You know, and then like, you know, his boy at the time, Gustavo, was the one that like helped put it all together for us. But yeah, there was a great way to introduce a project with someone as legendary as the synth goat Mike Dean to be part of it. And you know, we had some amazing artists on that project. Tizo was one of them. Red Veil, you know, Fauna Hughes, some really cool names on that project. And it took on a life of its own. Like it really became exciting. You know, the way Double XL has their freshman class. Like, we wanted to do something that had a similar kind of feel to it, but with an album and experience component, bringing artists together to collaborate. So that was the thing that helped introduce BAK to our community, and we were able to build upon that and do other cool things.
And I've seen you guys have worked with like Meek Mill and Rick Ross on a activation. You worked with Smino, who I'm a massive fan of. How did you guys even get in touch with like these people to start helping make campaigns for them?
Yeah, you know, it all fits in the big ass kid world. You know, I'm a sucker for world building. I like different ideas, you know, and you know, Smino, his manager Henny at the time reached out, was like, do you guys do like rollouts and like activations? And we hadn't done one specifically yet, but it was something that I was interested in if the idea was right. And Smino had a really cool idea of, you know, doing something for Love for Rent, his
Yeah.
album, and being from St. Louis and his roots, and I wanted to help bring St. Louis to life in LA. So went out to LA to meet up with him, and he told me what he had in mind, and we pay a lot of attention to detail, and we basically turned a Glendale home into his childhood home.
That's awesome.
We flew pizzas in from St. Louis. We had actors that were playing him as a child, his family in the kitchen serving pizzas, and a barbecue in the backyard, and we redesigned each room to feel like St. Louis, and the aesthetic of the outdoors resembled the artwork of the album with the outfits and the mirrors, and so.
How amazed was he when he walked in on there for the first time and saw
Yeah,
it?
no, he thought it was dope. For me, it's I like to execute a vision, right?
Yeah.
And I felt proud that vision was executed, and to see that he thought so as well. Like, that's why we do it. Like, it meant a lot that the artist also felt good about the idea that he had in his mind, seeing it come to life, and that we were able to help. And then the Meek Mill thing actually came from that actual project. So shout out to JD. Yeah, my boy JD, is a marketing wizard. He was working on a Smino project, and we met through that activation. And he's just like, listen, I have a couple of things that I'm working on that I love to collaborate with you on. And he hit me up when Rick Ross and Meek Mill were coming out with their project, and Too Good to Be True. Like, I'm like, well, give me some things that are too good to be true, right? And I started to think about, like, as a kid watching these TV shows and these commercials where people would knock on your door and you'd have this big check of like $1 million. I'm like, that always felt too good to be true. Like, I'm like, why does that happen to me? Like, this doesn't happen. So we wanted to create a digital version of that feeling, right? And giving people, a chance to win a large sum of money. And to be honest, like, it did feel too good to be true. And that was kind of like, it kind of hurt us in the end, because like people didn't believe that it was real, but it was. And it worked out because someone did end up winning. And it did attract some attention. And, I think it was a cool little layer to the campaign that made sense. So again, anything outside the box catches my attention, and I want to help bring it to life.
I love that. So would you say you were always like an ideas kind of guy, entrepreneurial in spirit?
Yeah, since I was a kid. I mean, like, that was always been my, is where I find my most joy in, is coming up with an idea that I'm like, oh, this is dope. Now I have to do it. Like, I have to do it. Whether it's an activation for another artist, something for me. When the pandemic hit, Lion Bay we had a whole international tour booked, right? And it got canceled because, COVID canceled every in-person show. So we were bummed out because it was our first big run international. And, we took that opportunity to, like, well, what are we going to do, right? So we created a virtual world tour, which I think we were one of the first to do it, where we partnered up with all the promoters that booked the show for that actual run. And we performed live on the venue's IG channel. And we had our own, like, virtual world tour merch. We performed and we geo-targeted it, so you can only access the location, the link to that show if you were based in that city. So we were only playing for Australia, mind you. We were waking up at 4 a.m. playing for Australia because of the time zone. So it was just like thinking outside the box. Is something I really appreciate, is the detail of thinking outside the box. And and then once the idea kind of connects, it's like now you got to see it through.
Yeah. Well, as advice for managers who are ideas people, maybe the artist didn't necessarily think the idea, the manager did, and they're trying to convey that to the artist. Maybe the artist doesn't fully understand it, and you have to be like, trust me, just like give this a chance. What have you learned from that process?
Yeah, I mean, look, trust. Being a manager, trust is probably the most important thing you can form with your artist. If the artist trusts you, from the time that you're spending in the ideas, from what I understand of the artist, working with them, understanding this idea they would understand.
Yeah.
Like I know what they like, what they don't like. So it's my job to present and create opportunities that I feel like would land. And I really haven't had any pushback on those kinds of interactions because a lot of times like they would live in the world of which they operate in. I mean, there are times where I come up with an idea that probably was stupid, but that's the fun part. It's
you miss
like
100% of the shots you don't
can't
take.
you look back and like that was it. That idea was insane. Like how did you but as for every 3 bad ideas, you got a couple of really great ones. So, as long as you're able to articulate the vision of the idea and you can like really present it in a way where in their language, usually they move forward with it.
Yeah. So for the artists who are joining like the Big.Ass.Kids program and they're in the playground, what are some like common questions you feel like keep coming from the artists who are trying to like break and make this a career?
Yeah, I mean, just to give you guys some context on like BAK, because it's funny because we started off as this label to do these projects, right? And we've evolved. We're constantly evolving, right? Not because that was like my 5-year plan.
Yeah.
It was because like we're reacting to just things as we see and as we're hearing, as we're feeling, as feedback we're getting from artists. Like the example of doing the Smino activation. We started doing more and more things like that, and then we started to expand in doing artist services. And shortly after I launched BAK, my co-founder Carolyn, who's my life partner as well, joined to help grow the company from a operational standpoint, right? So like how do we maximize our experience in music? How do we provide value in ways that don't really exist? And how do we solve problems that emerging and independent artists face day to day? So BAK as a label evolved into an ecosystem, right, that now includes this platform called The Playground. The Playground solves a couple of problems. It solves the problem of independent artists feeling like they're alone, right? Just because you're independent doesn't mean you're alone.
Yeah. The ones who succeed usually have a supportive team around them.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of artists that wear every hat, right? They're the marketing, they're the publicist, they're the engineer, they're the, they're the manager. So, and on the flip side, there's a lot of music professionals who, because of all the mass layoffs in the industry, are now looking for opportunities to, to grow their own career, whether it's now becoming a freelancer or running their own agency. They're also in a position where now they need to find opportunities. So we're like, these two things exist. So let's create a community where we identify, people who are credible, that are a safe space for artists, and allow artists to find them in an easier way versus social media or LinkedIn. Like it's a very specialized community where artists can find what they need and where professionals can find opportunities to continue to be in music. So because of that, we get a lot of artists who are, coming in and learning. I think education plays a big role in what we do because, again, being a manager for 20 years, working with artists from the ground up, what I take for granted and what I just think is basic, a lot of them don't know.
It's a different language in the music industry.
They don't know that they have to register their song. They don't, what PROs are, what the MLC is, ways to, structure their business. Like they're coming in making music, and it's one of those. It's an industry where you're still a founder of your business as an artist. You're still an entrepreneur in your own right. You're still building your music career is your business. So in any other industry, you need to surround your business with the right personnel for you to grow your business, the right education, the right tools. So we created this opportunity for artists to find that. They're finding the right resources, platforms, educational tools, opportunities, playlists, events. We just produced the Emerging Artist Stage at the Big Culture and Arts Festival in Gainesville.
Fire. For
artists to, just have opportunities that they wouldn't usually get normally. So, we do a lot, so we're always iterating and creating new things that we think could be of value. We get a lot of questions from artists on how do we scale our business up? Like, what do we do? Like, what do we need to do? It all depends on what stage you're at, and it also depends on what you have access to, and so it's a case by case.
Yeah. I want to read something directly off LinkedIn because there's too many stats for me to have memorized.
Oh, okay.
But we got, this is a post recently that industry layoffs have surged over 300%. Women still fighting for a seat at the table being CEOs. Only 15.6% are in CEO roles. 1 in 3 caretakers say the industry has not supported them with, mental health, balancing family life. 3 in 5 women have continue to be harassed or assaulted. All these issues within the industry. And you kind of touched on that, how like your goal is to solve these things. Yeah. Do you have any like theories or predictions on like how the industry is going to go? I think we're in an interesting time where literally yesterday Live Nation got sued. Live touring might be changing in the breakup. Record labels are slowly maybe losing their stranglehold on like, you need to be on a label. What platform I saw recently is like willing to give artists advances now? Do you know what I'm talking about? It was one of the, it wasn't DistroKid, but it was one of them is like now offering advances.
TuneCore, yeah. So Roy-Fi is another great platform who, allows artists to get funding without giving up any ownership. And there's a few platforms that are doing that. Run is another great one that we do a lot of work with, where we give artists the access to funds based on their back catalog. Yeah. And it allows them to reinvest into future music without having to give up any ownership. And it's a straight licensing arrangement where the artist recoups from the music that's licensed. So it's an alternative to what artists are used to. And I think, artists need to determine if it makes sense for them. It's not for everyone, but it's good to have options in terms of knowing how to access capital to fund what you're doing. A lot of times you see deals come into play where it's like, you gotta have to give up ownership, which might not be in what you're looking to do at that time. Yeah. Right. So licensing your music can be a great way to unlock some money to put into your career without giving up ownership of your music. So, the stats that you call out, those are real stats. Yeah. I think, especially for women in music, there's a lot of issues in that world, from abuse to just being in a role where you have actual equity in the company that you're working for or working with. So shout out to Carolyn, who's again my partner, who's built incredible resources for women in music. Pitch Perfect was built with that in mind. She comes from the Universal world, and she's seen firsthand the issues that women face day to day. And like I said earlier, like we're committed to solving problems. We're if we have the ability to solve it, we're doing ourselves a disservice by not providing solutions if we can. So, I think, ecosystems are important in music moving forward, where you can access information easier, access tools, access people to grow your career. So I think that's where the industry is going, and making things simpler to run your career, whether you're a professional, whether you're an artist. Yeah.
And to that, I know you're someone who's very interested in Bitcoin, something that I have not been able to wrap my head around. Maybe artists are more confused how that even applied to their career, something of unlocking a new
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I've gone down the rabbit hole, as they say. I've been orange pilled. I'm curious when it comes to learning things about industries that I'm not familiar in. If I'm this is interesting. How did it get to this point? Yeah. Right. And I started learning about inflation. I started learning about how the banking system works. I understood how money is like a melting ice cube every single year. Right. And I also understood that people tend to think that prices are going up every year, whether it's cost of living. And I'm like, that's technically true, but it's more so that the value of the dollar is depreciating. So everything just is more expensive because it requires more dollars to pay for the same thing, right? So why is that? It's because the government can print as much money as they want whenever they want. So you're devaluing, debasing the currency. right? When you look at property like Bitcoin, which is a protocol, it's decentralized. It's a commodity, right?
Yeah.
So
There's like a limited number, right?
there's a cap supply of 21 million that will ever exist,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, it started off sub $1, and I think today it's starting to bounce back. It's at $77,000 per coin.
Jeez.
So, and it's still very early. So for it to grow at that speed, and you're starting to see the administration, creating policies around it. You're starting to see institutions embrace it. You're starting to see banks embrace it. You're starting to see the momentum behind it start to really accelerate.
Yeah.
And you ask 10 people in the street if they've ever heard of Bitcoin, most of them will still say no. So for me, it's still very early in the adoption phase of it all. And to answer your question, why is that important to an artist or to anyone, to really anyone? It really applies to anybody. If you're generating money through your royalties, and you're sitting on that money, right? You're actually losing value. You're losing the value of the money that you're making from your art.
Yeah.
Right. So I recently launched something, platform called Bitcoin, and we're not launching a coin. It was just more of an educational tool because I think financial literacy is important in the industry, and I don't think we're taught. We've been taught correctly growing up about how money actually works.
For sure.
Right. We're not, and some people grow up around families that were well versed in that. Majority aren't. I wasn't. So we're not really taught that in school. So by the time you're my age, you're like, holy shit, I've been taught this the wrong way this whole time.
Yeah.
So I think this is an opportunity for people to understand money a bit better from a business standpoint. How do you convert money that you're earning from a currency that's depreciating into an asset that's growing over time? So I want to introduce the idea where artists can create this kind of flywheel effect where they're generating dollars from their music, converting it into a Bitcoin, an asset that's grown over time, and you're building an asset that's, can lead to wealth. Wealth isn't necessarily having the most money in the bank.
Yeah.
Right. Wealth is having assets that are growing over time, that are compounding over time.
Yeah.
And then learning how to borrow against it, responsibly, where, people don't realize that when you borrow against your asset, it's not taxable, right? It's not a taxable event.
I remember my brothers recently telling me that like Mark Zuckerberg isn't necessarily using money from the bank when he buys something, that he's using like his investments, and like the banks are giving him loans based on knowing that he can like pay it back, and like learning about that, like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, when you deposit money in the bank, you're getting maybe if a 1% interest, right, from that money in the bank. The bank takes that money that you put in the bank, loans it out at 20%. So they're making 20% off the money that you're putting in while giving you 1%.
Yeah.
So, that's backwards.
Yeah.
Right? So when you look at building an asset that appreciates faster than the rate of inflation, and you can borrow against it, and every year that asset's growing, technically that loan will never become due.
Yeah.
Because your loan to value is at a rate where you can continue to borrow against it as the asset grows.
Yeah.
As you borrow it, you're not getting taxed on it, right? So that's what a lot of the wealthy people that I learned are doing. They're not cashing out their asset, because once you cash it out, then you get taxed.
Yeah.
If it grows and appreciates and you borrow against it, it's a different scenario. So anyway, as it relates to music, I just want people to learn about money, how it works, how to preserve it in a way where you're building assets that, that continue to grow, versus sitting on money that's being depreciated. So that's something I've been passionate about, and I just think the people that I'm speaking to in the music industry are, they're focused on their career, they're focused on music, that they overlook the business side of things and the revenue side of things. I just want them to understand it and then make the conclusion for themselves if it's something that they want to, try.
Yeah. transparency, education, something that maybe the industry isn't founded on, but it seems like it's getting there.
Yeah. I think, as tools and as people can become more and more independent, they have access to more and more tools that are important to them.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of doing your research and taking the time to learn. I think that's the area too that people overlook. It's like, take the time to learn the things. Mm-hmm. Information exists.
Yeah.
Like,
it's easier than ever to watch a YouTube video.
Yeah, you get a lot. I mean, you also get a lot of stuff that isn't accurate, right?
That too.
But you got to put in your hours. Like, I put in over 1,000 hours, and then you start to learn about new things. And shout out to, Michael Saylor, who I've been studying, and he's been launching products that I think can be integrated into people's strategy, STRC, without getting too into the Bitcoin space, but, there's things like STRC that are giving people between 10 and 11.5% yield annually on the on the money that they park into that, that stock, So it's just, again, it's educating, giving information, sharing information for people to come up with their own conclusion.
I love it. Well, I thought we could talk about this for hours and then talk about the music industry for hours, but I want to give you a spot because I know you said there's some events coming up, some panels that you're doing, and where people can find you can sign up for the playground and
doing a panel with Sounds That Move, presented by Move Forward Music, Alex Demashek, who's been a GOAT in the New York music scene. He's been around forever, and he's been a big part of introducing artists to the scene. And he took on an ambitious project of like almost kind of creating the CMJ. I don't know if you remember CMJ. CMJ was almost like our South by Southwest.
Okay.
That was happening in the 2010s, where it was like a festival where there was just different venues participating and whatnot. So he's recreating the energy, the spirit of CMJ with Sounds That Move, and
looks like I know Saba's performing there.
Saba's performing.
Who's the
Axis
DJ?
is another one who's another artist who's on See You Next Year who's performing. So yeah, I'll be on a panel with Mag from Even, Shah from Indify, another great platform. So that's exciting. But in terms of how people can connect with us, we have the Playground, which is bakplayground.com. We have Music Man, which is bakmusicman.com, which is our distro arm. It's a great way for artists to integrate resources and community within their distro offering, right? You hear, every distributor gets your music to the DSPs.
Yeah.
A lot of them say that they pitch to playlisting, which, they do. Can't guarantee any placement, but they pitch. We all pitch. But we felt it was more important just to service music to the DSPs. We wanted artists to have access to the Playground for a way of building infrastructure to feel supported, to have a sounding board, to have education, to have tools to grow their career. So that's one of the exciting things we're doing. And then Monetize, which I was explaining earlier, which is the live album.
Very excited for that.
Platform service that we're introducing to artists who are on the road and are interested in preserving their night and making more revenue on the road. We all know how hard it is to generate revenue outside of streaming. So we wanted to give artists another opportunity to add that to their repertoire. So look out for that. That's coming soon. And BAK from the project side, we have See You Next Year dropping May 15th.
There we go.
Volume 3. Some amazing artists on there. Samara Sim, Igweaka, Overcast, Lean,
Guinevere too.
Having a moment, killing it in Nigeria right now. Shout out to Igwe. Another project we got cooking is The Lunch Table that I'm doing with Annabelle Klein.
Yes.
With that good shit.
Shout out to her.
I'm excited about that one. We have some really cool surprises for that rollout. There's so many cool things that could go on and on, but
that's why you gotta follow him on Instagram. You gotta follow Big.Ass.Kids and
follow Big.Ass.Kids. Follow at Leroy Benros, and dive into the BAK world and see everything that we got going on. All the cool people working with.
I love it. Well, if you made it to the end of the episode, I love you. Thank you. You can find Sound Centric Podcast on all streaming platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Adam-Dash _ Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn if you want to follow my law and music industry career. But we shall see you next time. Peace. That was fire.
That was good.
It was great.